St. Paul is a city that believes in family, in community, and in the dignity of every person who calls this place home. In the past several months, we've witnessed fear spread through our neighborhoods as federal immigration enforcement operations, including Operation Metro Surge, created real harm for real families right here in our city. The St. Paul City Council did not stand by. From December 2025 through March 2026, we acted with urgency, with unity, and with purpose. Today, we want to walk you through every step we took to protect our community and to make clear, St. Paul will always stand up for its people.
In late summer, constitutional observer trainings were getting stood up across the city, and by October, we had our first documented raid of ICE right in my neighborhood, the North End. Federal enforcement activities escalated dramatically across our city. Operation Metro Surge brought a wave of fear into St. Paul neighborhoods, particularly in the North End and the East Side. Residents described terror, armed federal agents in plain clothes without clear identification operating in our communities. The Rose Avenue incident drew widespread attention as community members like myself that were observers witnessed aggressive enforcement actions that led neighbors shaken and completely afraid. We heard from families afraid to go to work, to take their children to school, to call 911. Small businesses shuttered, parents kept their children home, and people who'd built lives here, contributing to our city, our economy, our schools, they suddenly felt they could no longer trust that their community was safe. The damage to our public trust was broken, and the harm to our families was visceral and violent. And as a city council, we knew we had a responsibility to respond.
Our response began long before Operation Metro Surge. In August 2025, this council called on the Trump administration to end its campaign of mass deportations and family separations and affirmed the vital contributions immigrants make to Minnesota's economy and our way of life. Then in December, we voted unanimously 7-0 to restore funding for both the Immigrant Defense Fund and the Naturalization Support Fund, allocating $300,000 to directly support immigrant communities facing hardship. That same month, after community members reported seeing St. Paul police use force against residents who were lawfully observing and protesting federal agents, we passed a resolution calling for a full investigation and reminding the department of its obligation to remain separate from federal immigration enforcement.
As we moved into 2026 and the situation intensified, we recognized that standard legislative timelines were not adequate for the moment. In January, we adopted a resolution creating a formal, accelerated process for acting quickly on immigration-related matters, one that preserved transparency, required legal review, and ensured the public could still participate. We built a structure to move fast without cutting corners.
One of the things that scared residents most was not knowing who the people in tactical gear outside their homes were, whether they were real law enforcement, under what authority they were operating, and if they had the right to be there. We moved quickly to address this. On February 4th, we unanimously passed an ordinance restricting law enforcement from staging operations on city-owned properties and limiting access to non-public city spaces. 1 week later, we passed an ordinance requiring all law enforcement officers to clearly display their identification while on duty, so community members always know exactly who they are dealing with. And the following week, we added a requirement that law enforcement officers not wear masks or facial coverings during operations in our city, with limited exceptions, making it easier for residents to identify officers and report misconduct. 3 ordinances in 3 weeks, because accountability cannot wait.
We also spoke directly to the constitutional moment we are in. Through Resolution 26-215, we reaffirmed this council's commitment to uphold and defend our U.S. Constitution and declared our support for Congress as a co-equal branch of government and raised serious concerns about what we see as unconstitutional concentration of power in the executive branch. St. Paul stands for the rule of law. We passed a resolution urging hotels within city limits to refrain from housing federal immigration agents, recognizing the direct link between their presence in the fair, economic harm, and the public safety concerns our residents were experiencing.
We also recognized that when families are afraid to leave their homes, they can't work. And when they can't work, they can't pay their bills. We called on Governor Walz to implement an energy and gas shutoff moratorium to protect Minnesota families sheltering indoors from enforcement activities. And we put city dollars where our values are. We redirected $1.42 million to our emergency rental assistance program, adding $500,000 in direct rental support and funding the staff who run the program, bringing our total ERA funding to over $3.8 million. Most recently, we passed an ordinance extending the pre-eviction notice period from 30 days to 60 days, giving families more time to access resources and stay housed, because keeping families in their homes is public safety too.
Finally, we are working on a new ordinance, Chapter 44A, focused on strengthening how our city prepares for and responds to federal immigration enforcement operations. This work is about making sure city employees and supervisors, especially those in public safety, are fully trained, supported, and clear on their roles during these situations. It also establishes clear reporting structures and improves how information is shared when enforcement occurs, so we can provide timely, accurate updates both within the city and to our community. We've developed this ordinance in close partnership with departments across St. Paul, including SPPD, SPFD, parks, libraries, the city attorney's office, and the mayor's office, because this work requires coordination at every level of government. Because in moments of uncertainty, clarity, coordination, and trust are not optional. They are essential.
Some have asked whether actions like these undermine public safety. We want to be clear. The opposite is true. Research consistently shows that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than the native-born population. Our immigrant and refugee neighbors come here seeking a better life, and they find one by contributing to our schools, our businesses, our neighborhoods. We are not protecting violent criminals. When someone is dangerous to the community, we hold them accountable, full stop. What we are doing is making sure that every St. Paul resident, regardless of where they were born or what language they speak, feels safe enough to call 911, to talk to an officer, to trust the institutions that are supposed to serve them. That is what real public safety looks like.
Our city is stronger because of its immigrants. We always have been. We don't cross borders, borders cross us. Our community has been built by waves of folks who have arrived with hopes and willingness to work, to worship, and to contribute to our great city. That story is still being written, and in every chapter that makes us better. Local government has a responsibility to treat every resident with dignity and fairness, and we made a choice to stand up for people over authoritarianism, and we are proud of that choice.
Our first and most sacred responsibility as elected officials is to the people of St. Paul. Every person in the city, no matter where they were born, no matter what language they speak, deserves to feel safe, respected, and fully part of this community. What you've seen today is a council that moved fast, worked together, and refused to look away. We will continue to defend our local authority, protect our residents, and uphold the values that make St. Paul the extraordinary city it is. St. Paul is and will always be a welcoming city for all.